morning. KJ7T is in the booth. Today's podcast, Random Wire Reflections, covers the Random Wire Review issue 107, coming out on Friday, September 13th. Today's topics include a new Heltec T114 device, flashing Meshtastic, the Radxa E20C router, a Winlink presentation to some Boeing hams, an audio device error on my Wires X portable digital node, and charging a power station, and more. So let's jump into the featured content on the Heltec T114. It arrived and the configuration was easy. The new Heltec T114 arrived from Heltec Automation this week, and it is a cute little thing. Unfortunately, it arrived with no battery. In hindsight, I should have bought the offering from MusicWorks that includes the battery. However, MusicWorks shows the battery number, and Amazon had one for only $7.99, so the proper battery will arrive in about a week. No instructions came with the device when ordered from Heltec, not even a link to product documentation. Not to worry though, Heltec has a thorough page about the T114 at their site. I physically assembled the unit without looking at the instructions. The hole in the case for the external antenna seemed not quite large enough, so instead I used the included coil antenna and left it inside the case. The GPS antenna only goes one way, so that was easy to slot into place. The GPS wiring harness only goes into the socket one way, so that, too, was pretty easy. Then when I plugged it into power, the device came alive, but obviously Meshtastic was not yet installed on it. Here's where it gets particularly easy to get Meshtastic running on the T114. Plug a USB-C data cable into the T114 and into your computer. Press the green blinking reset button twice in quick succession. You should then see the T114 on your computer as a separate device. Download the correct .uf2 file from Heltec, then drag and drop that file into the device folder on your computer. Wait a few moments until the device reboots, at which point you should see Meshtastic 2.4.2 running. You'll still need to pair it with your smartphone, so go to Bluetooth on your smart device and find the T114. Click that to begin pairing. The T114 will show a 6-digit code on the screen, and you'll get a pop-up on your smart device where you enter the 6-digit number. Then open the Meshtastic app and find and tap your new node. Once it is recognized by the app, change the region setting to US, and at this point it should automatically reboot. And that's it, unless you want to fiddle with other settings. Clearly, I did not wait for the internal battery to arrive from Amazon before trying the node. To do this, I used a power bank, a USB cable, and a strip of blue painter tape to temporarily hold the pieces together. Surprisingly, it did not work for more than a few minutes. It turns out my power bank has a feature that causes the bank to shut off if insufficient draw is detected. The T114 did not draw enough power to keep the power bank turned on. This is probably a very good indication that the T114 is going to be miserly when it comes to power consumption. I did test the unit while driving between Portland, Oregon and Olympia, Washington, using a very sophisticated setup, which is the T114 taped to the dashboard of the truck with a piece of blue painter tape. With no battery installed, the T114 stays very cool while operating. Later, I changed the antenna from the internal coil antenna to the external stubby. The small wire coil inside the case resting against the PCB did not seem very sensitive. I thought the SMA jack did not fit through the pre-drilled hole in the case, but I was mistaken. Upon closer inspection, there is a flat milled into the jack and the hole has a matching profile. The two little buttons are free floating in the case cover holes, so they get a bit fiddly when putting the case back together. I used blue painter tape to hold them in place. In issue 107, there are several photos showing how this went together, and in the photo with the blue tape, you can see how I routed the antenna wire inside the case. Also, there is a design flaw in that the USB-C port on the case is too close to the antenna mount. Antennas with larger bases interfere with charging. I suppose an additional design question mark is why the GPS antenna is on the opposite end of the case from the 915 MHz antenna. Most of us are going to carry this thing with a stubby antenna pointing up, and that puts the GPS antenna at the base of the device. However, I'm not really complaining because in the car this will sit on the back, the side opposite the display, where both antennas will be relatively unimpeded. Overall, I quite like this little unit. Adding the battery will improve it. The only modification I can suggest at this time would be a small hole or an eyelet, so one could attach this to a lanyard. Moving on to number 2, flashing Meshtastic. As long as I had some Meshtastics out on the bench, I went ahead and updated the software in 2 nodes. Both are Heltec V3 devices. I chose to flash them to the latest stable version 2.4.2.5 blah 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 beta. This note about flashing Meshtastic refers to other nodes, not to the T114. To do this, I connect my node to a USB port on my personal computer, then open https://flasher.meshtastic.org. A prerequisite of this is to install a serial driver for your COM port that matches the type of device you'll be flashing. I had already done this, so I just had to select the correct COM port. Then you select the Flash button. You'll get a pop-up that describes the firmware. Select the Continue button at the end of the description, and additional instructions will follow. I left items 1 and 2 at the default settings. For item 3, I did not select Full Erase and Install, as I wanted to retain my settings. After clicking the Update bar, it took a few minutes for the firmware to install, and then the node restarted. In item 3, the Radxa E20C router arrived. The Radxa device I heard about on Liliputing arrived a week ago, and I've just started to play with it. With 2 GB of RAM and 16 GB of eMMC storage, my hope is to load all Starlink onto this machine. It can run Debian Bullseye, so I'm hoping this could work, but we'll see. In my first attempt, I'm going to try to get Bullseye loaded and then follow the steps outlined by David Gleason, NR9V, in an allstarlink.org community forum post. The E20C is described by Radxa as a mini network titan. Strong words. An informative review is available on hackster.io. I wanted to try a similarly sized device called the NanoPi R2S open source mini router, but the NanoPi does not have built-in storage and it only comes with 1 GB of RAM. Therefore, I sprung for the E20C instead. The operating system can be loaded onto a microSD card or into the built-in eMMC storage. I very much prefer running from eMMC, so I'll try loading it there first. Note that there is no DisplayPort on this little box. All interactions occur over TCP/IP in a browser of your choice. This is a solid little thing. It weighs about the same as a USB charger of the same size. It's a bit lighter in weight than a 16.9 fluid ounce bottle of water or soda. In item 4, I write about the Bears Meeting Winlink presentation. Bears is the Boeing Employees Amateur Radio Society. I was deeply impressed by the level of experience and expertise present in the meeting. Lots of knowledge in this group of amateurs. Bears has been working on a repeater enhancement project with a grant from the ARDC. What I saw presented showed great work performed for Bears by Day Wireless Systems. But why did I attend the Bears meeting over Zoom? It was to watch a presentation by Bill Thomason, N6NBN, on Winlink. Winlink is often used by emergency management departments, but it is also a common way for sailors to send and receive information on HF bands. I learned some new things from Bill's presentation. He is clearly far more knowledgeable about Winlink than I am. You can see his presentation at a link provided in issue 107. During the presentation, I emailed Bill over Winlink, and it didn't take long for him to respond. Item 5 is about a WiresX error again. When I remoted into my home server to see if any software updates were needed, I also restarted WiresX. That might have been a mistake because when it came back up, I got the dreaded, quote, "Not found the audio device for the WiresX use," unquote, message for my portable digital node. What did I do? Well, I crawled around on the floor to check that the audio cables that connect to the SCU58 cable set were in the sound card holes. It's an old sound card with the different colored ports. I checked the connections for my audio extension cables because the server is several feet away from the radio. I unplugged the SCU58 cable from the microphone jack and plugged in an old set of earbuds kept on hand for this exact purpose. And when that didn't work, I reverted to having the SCU58 cable in the mic jack. I unplugged the SCU58 from the back of the radio and plugged it back in, and I restarted the radio. Did any of that work? No joy. I still had the error. And then I remembered I had written about this very problem back in June. Reviewing that note reminded me I had to reboot the server. Usually I can reboot the server and immediately remote into it. I run the server headless, meaning it operates with no monitor, keyboard, or mouse directly connected to it. That generally works very fine. When it doesn't work, it means an operating system update got installed that monkeyed with one of the interfaces. Okay, no worries. Break out the small keyboard and mouse I keep handy for just this purpose and temporarily plug the HDMI cable into my desktop monitor. Sure enough, Windows 11 was showing me a welcome screen to set up a new system. I skipped all the prompts and got the server up and then restarted WiresX, and the not found error for the audio device had disappeared. Second reminder to myself, next time just reboot the server. In item 6, I talk about an old power station power supply. One of the nice things about being a ham is the ability to improvise. I have an older power station circa 2021, which is now old in power station years, and it was missing the charger. When I searched online for the Aki Power Zeus, I found very little information. I searched by model number, I searched for a manual. The closest I came was for the same make and model being sold in Italy. That description read, provides pure sine wave 110 volt AC just like the outlet at home. 518 watt-hour, huge capacity, provides 16 extra hours of drone flying, 24 more hours of phone video recording, 18 hours of professional lighting, or an extra 10 hours of continuous live streaming from a remote location. Great for hiking, camping, RV travel, and hunting. But there was no charger listed. Fortunately, the charger input is a barrel jack for up to 3 amps of input power. When I saw the 3 amps, I wondered if my 12-volt DC charger that I use for some Dell Wise 3040 thin clients and for my Behringer Mic 500 USB preamplifier might fit. And it did. I charged the power station for a few minutes, but the draw made the wall wart very, very warm to the touch. So I ordered a 12-volt 3-amp charger from Amazon with a 5.5mm by 2.5mm barrel connector for just $9.99. This seemed like a pretty cheap way to experiment. The charger was delivered the next day, and the power station has been charging at a rate of 31 watts in. It just finished charging up to 100%. Score 1 for being an amateur radio operator. Item 7 is about the Trials and Errors blog that I found while wandering around the QRZ website. This amateur radio blog has some interesting content. 3 items I found to be particularly good by Dave Jensen, W7DGJ. One is the Chameleon Tactical Delta Loop Antenna. I'm interested in this antenna, so Dave's informative review of it was very welcome. The Morserino and the Prepcom MMX. These are interesting devices to help you learn and use Morse code. And finally, Shrinking the Kit. Being that I like small, compact devices, Dave's article on Shrinking the Kit was also interesting. In item 8, I list some interesting links to content that I found this week. Radio topics include a YouTube on Faraday cloth as a ground network, a primer on magnetic loop antennas, and the NanoSpot 2.8-inch external display, which looks like an easy way to add a Nextian display to an MMDVM hotspot. Under networking are 3 articles: minimize CO2 emissions with single-pair Ethernet, 3 reasons you should be using VLANs on your home network, and the Angry IP scanner, which I find to be a simpler alternative to what I have been using. And under Other is an article about the DJI Neo drone. And the title of that is, I tested the DJI Neo and it's so good that all I can think about now is flying it. Let's file this under if I had money to throw away. Item 9 is the closing. Next week, I'm on the road Tuesday through Friday, so the Random Wire content will undoubtedly be light. The week after that, we set off on our 2-week road trip from Portland, Oregon to Wichita, Kansas, with a stop in Moab and back. I won't be doing any building while I'm traveling, but I hope to do some radio operating. I'm sure I'll have some stories from the road to share. I will be running my Yaesu FTM 300DR C4FM mobile radio with APRS. You can find me as KJ7T-9. I'll also be running a Meshtastic node as a tracker, as I want to compare that against running APRS. I might also take a Tech Scout transceiver or my Yaesu FT891 and a telescoping aerial for a bit of HF work, but we'll be driving long distances, so I expect the HF radio will stay in the case most of the time. I do know I'll take an All-Starlink node with me, probably the 588417 Sherry node, pre-configured this time to connect to my travel router or cellular hotspot. With that, it is time to close. I wish each of you a wonderful transition from summer to fall. 73 to all. This is KJ7T, and I'm clear.